Welcome to Garden Sanity. I'm Laura, and today I want to tell you about drift roses, including the different varieties, their growing requirements, are they deer and or rabbit proof, as well as planting, deadheading, and pruning. It sounds like a lot, but overall, drift roses are a super easy shrub to grow, and more importantly, they're long blooming and gorgeous. So what are drift roses? Drift roses were developed by combining the best traits of ground cover roses and miniature roses. So what that means is you get roses that are easy care, low to no maintenance during the growing season, and long blooming, gorgeous color. Drift roses are more of a spreading, drifting rose shrub, thus the name. They stay lower to the ground versus taller rose shrubs. The average height and width is only 1.5 feet tall by 2.5 feet wide. Drift roses are hardy in zones 4 to 11, meaning just about everyone can plant drift roses in their gardens. Whether you live where winter is the dormant season and your drift roses go to sleep, or you live in Florida where drift roses have been known to bloom almost year-round. There's at least 10 different varieties in pretty colors, as well as single or double blooms to choose from. The first two colors I can show you from my own gardens, as I have 4 peach drift roses in my front yard and 2 popcorn drift roses in my backyard. Peach drift is said to be one of the most floriferous dwarf roses available, and I can attest to this as I have flowers from late spring all the way until frost. The rosebuds on peach drift are a pretty peach orange color, and the flowers start out a vibrant darker color before gradually lightening up. So you get multiple shades of peach and pink on one plant, from darker pink to medium peach tones, all the way to pale pink colors. Popcorn drift has buttery yellow flowers that eventually fade to creamy white. I've seen bits of pink scattered here and there on some of the petals, and just like the peach drift roses, you have multiple shades and colors on the same plant. The rosebuds almost look like popcorn kernels, at least that's my own impression, with a similar coloring to the peach drift rosebuds, a peach orange color. In fact, according to the company that developed and breeds drift roses, with popcorn drift roses you can actually get some coloration similar to peach drift roses. And guess what? Look what I have here in my own garden. It looks like a peach drift rose, but it's just one of the stems on the popcorn drift roses. I love it. Now, other colors that drift roses come in are apricot, a double flowering drift rose, blushing drift, double pink flowers with a yellow center, buttercream drift, light yellow flowers, coral drift, coral orange flowers, lemon drift, yellow flowers, pink drift, deep pink flowers that fade toward yellow centers, red drift, red double flowers, sweet drift, fully double pink flowers, and white drift, fully double white flowers. Now I'll put the website where you can see each of these varieties in the description box below this video. Drift roses technically bloom every 5 weeks or so, but because there's always new roses forming on the plants, drift roses bloom almost non-stop, summer into fall, and sometimes up until the first frost. Their first heavy flush arrives in late spring or early summer, and that's depending on your gardening zone, and the flowers last for a long time and just keep on coming. Drift roses can make quite an impact in your garden, whether you plant many of them together or use them as single plants in your garden or containers. Drift roses aren't meant to grow very tall at all, but instead are favored for their spread, their width, along the ground. The average size is 1.5 feet tall by 2.5 feet wide. However, there's some variation in the width, the spread, from 2 feet up to 3 feet, depending on the variety. So for example, the peach and popcorn varieties that I have each spread 2 feet wide, while the pink drift variety, for example, spreads 3 feet wide. While drift roses usually don't get any higher than 1.5 feet tall, they can grow a little higher if not pruned, or if not pruned back hard. For example, this year I purposely didn't prune my peach drift roses back that much because I want them to be taller this year. You see, I planted firelight tidbits in front of the drift roses, so I want the drift roses to be taller than the tidbits, and also more prominent in front of the pinky winky hydrangeas, which won't begin blooming until midsummer. Now, drift roses grow like crazy during the season, often tripling in size. So this means that if you prune them down, to say 6 inches in the spring, they will triple in size to 18 inches tall, which is the normal 1.5 feet tall size for these roses. So you can actually play around with how tall or short you want your drift roses to be. In fact, I may go back to pruning them hard next spring, but I wanted to try out what they look like a little taller. And I'll show you how they look in upcoming videos throughout the season. Plus, I'll talk about pruning specifically at the end of this video. So drift roses should be in full sun, which means at least 6 to 8 hours of sun each day. That's going to have them bloom at their best. In some of the warmer climates, you might want to do some afternoon shade, but do make sure they get at least 6 hours of sun each day. For soil, neutral soil is fine, although most roses prefer slightly acidic soil. And rose fertilizer is actually recommended for drift roses, meaning your drift roses will be fine in slightly acidic soil. And I'll get to fertilizer in a little bit. Now let's talk about water. Now, how much to water will depend on your soil and your own gardening zone and climate, as well as if your plant is new or already established in your garden. Newly planted drift roses need regular watering to maintain a moist soil, especially important during their first season in your garden. But you don't want to drown the roots either. Your soil needs to be well draining for drift roses to thrive. And once your drift roses are established in a year or two, you'll find they don't require as much water at all. When you water, water at the base of the shrub and water deeply each time you water. It's always better to water deeply to help the roots reach downward. If you water just the surface of the soil, then the shrub's roots will stay near the surface, which isn't healthy for the plant. And as with any new plant or shrub, it is trial and error until you get the watering just right, but please don't fret. When in doubt, do the simple method of sticking your finger into the soil. If the soil feels dry, it's time to water. If the soil feels moist, check it again the next day. Also, keep in mind that your drift rose will need more water during the heat of the summer or if there's lack of rain. Unfortunately, drift roses are not deer or rabbit proof, so even with thorns, they can be eaten. Now, I'm fortunate not to deal with deer at all, but I do battle rabbits every year and it can be quite a battle. So what I do is I protect my drift roses during winter with chicken wire cloches, which work great. Once the cloches are removed in spring, I regularly apply rabbit repellents around the plants, and yes, this is an ongoing garden chore. Now, I'll put some links in the description area below this video so you can see exactly what products I use. When planting drift roses, make sure the drift rose is planted at the same soil level as it is in the pot it comes in. Dig a hole that is slightly wider than the pot, but only as deep as the pot, no deeper. Use a starter fertilizer if you want, to help the roots get established. I use biotone, sprinkled into the planting hole, and then I use my gloved hand to mix it into the native soil. When you remove the rose from the pot, check the roots. If the plant is root bound, having lots of roots wrapping around in a circle against the inside of the pot, use your fingers to gently tease some of the roots apart so they won't continue growing in a circle. You want the roots to spread out underground, and teasing them apart just a bit will help them do this more quickly. Place the plant in the hole and fill in around the plant with the native soil you just removed when digging the hole. Tap down and then water the plant well. Cover the soil around the rose with mulch to help preserve moisture and keep the soil cooler during hot temperatures. But make sure not to put the mulch all the way up to the stems. Leave some room between the mulch and the plants. Try and plant your drift roses in an area with good air circulation to help prevent any fungal diseases like black spot. This is especially important if your summers are hot and humid. I planted my peach drift roses in a windy open spot, which helps. And in my backyard, I have my popcorn drift roses where they also get good air circulation. If you see any black spot, and I've only had this happen occasionally with my drift roses during rainy weather or humid weather, just spray them with neem oil. I'll link below in the description area to what I use, as it works 3 ways to keep the roses healthy using a fungicide, a miticide, and an insecticide. Spray either early in the morning before the pollinators are around, or spray in the early evening. That's all you should need to keep your drift roses healthy. The first year in the ground, there's no need for any additional fertilizers, because your drift roses were already treated with fertilizer in the nursery where they were grown. But the following year, and once a year every spring after that, fertilize your drift roses with an organic fertilizer. I use Rose Tone by Espoma, which is a slow-release organic fertilizer specifically for roses. You sprinkle it around the plants, around the drip line, and water it into the soil or put the fertilizer down before it rains so Mother Nature can water it in for you. The fantastic thing about drift roses is you don't need to deadhead them. I repeat, you do not need to deadhead drift roses. The flowers literally dry up and fall off the plant on their own. Now, after a heavy flush of flowers, if you don't like the look of all those dried roses, you can snip them off for a cleaner look and nothing bad will happen. But isn't it nice to know that you don't have to deadhead these? Occasionally, I will snip off some of the shriveled up flowers on the peach drift roses since they are front and center in my garden facing the street. But otherwise, there's no ongoing deadheading like I do with my knockout roses. And now we come to pruning. Drift roses only need one hard pruning a year, and early spring is the time to do it. In my video simply called Pruning Drift Roses, it's easy. I show you step by step how to prune. I give you some tips on what to watch out for, and most importantly, I share how much to prune off to keep your drift roses beautiful. So, watch this video next. And until next time, happy gardening.